Hey everybody, I'm Amber.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're
Witches Talking Tarot.
And I don't know if you guys can tell by our tone, but it's going to be the first time I'm going to open with a trigger warning. Today we're talking about our relationship with death. We're talking about the way that we grieve and the way our society deals with death. Like, not the whole shebang, right? We don't have enough time in the world for that. But we are personally mourning right now. That's why you didn't have an episode from us last week. We took a week off out of respect for our friend. This episode is dedicated to our dear friend, Rex Guest, his wife Mariah, and their children.
I'm sorry, guys. I have a nervous smile for my YouTubers.
I
really do.
Thinking about things and talking about them are very difficult. So I apologize for all the times my voice will crack tonight. But this is an episode I've been wanting to do since season 1 because of my own personal life path. And we felt like this was a good time to address it because we are dealing with something that's personal to both of us. When we talk about in episodes how we got together at Mabon or Yule and the food that was made and the friends we were with, these were the friends we were with. Yeah. We've known them for a long time.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things that are hard with death. And so this might be an episode that is too hard to listen to. It's going to be hard for us to get through. And there may be tears shed. And we do not want to hurt anyone. Our goal in this episode is to help people in this time because unfortunately we will all deal with death one day.
I don't like to think about that. I know it's a part of my shadow work because we all die. Everything dies. Everything has its time. Shit causes me to have the worst anxiety, and I know it's the fear of the unknown, and I know that that's a common fear. I know it's not uncommon. That being said, with the path that I'm on and with our path as witches and pagans, it's really in that line of spirituality to acknowledge and to learn and to accept and to remember, if you will. And
in happier episodes, we've talked about the differences between Christian funerals and pagan ones.
Oh, my husband was so shocked. Like, I mean, I don't know if you would label this as pagan.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was straight up pagan, but it was definitely, if nothing else, non-religious.
Right, non-religious. My husband's only been to Christian funerals and memorials, and he was just so shocked at the fact that people were laughing. People were up and laughing and telling dirty jokes and eating food, and we were partying and celebrating.
It was a celebration.
It was the happiest fucking funeral I've ever been to.
This is how these people are. Like, I know like a minimum of half the people there, and that's how we deal with things, right? Like earlier, I think we were in the car and something was brought up about like dark humor, and I like that's how you deal with hard things is dark humor, dark. The dark humor helps you get through the darkness. You know what I mean?
For some people, yes. I am one of those. Well, I guess it depends on the situation. I'm one of those to crack the jokes, but if you're making the jokes at me, like, read the room. So I'm a total hypocrite, you know what I mean?
You know what? Like, at one point, his wife, she was, like, getting emotionally overwhelmed, and she was, you know, trying not to cry, and so I started making inappropriate jokes that I had already made in the funeral parlor, and immediately after leaving the funeral parlor, I will not repeat these jokes for you all. It's not for you. But that's what did it. I mean, it worked. That's why I made the jokes in the first place at the funeral parlor, was to help her come back, you know. But that's because she's grieving, and we all grieve. And this episode is not necessarily about our friends particularly. This episode is about how people deal with grief. Mm-hmm. And everybody's different.
Everybody deals with grief differently.
They do. And everybody's different in their beliefs. So I know one thing we wanted to address in this episode about grief is be careful what you say.
Please fucking be careful what you say. I'm sure you guessed the story, but I didn't tell you the story behind this. I don't know. But anyway, if you know someone has lost another person and they're probably not of the Christian faith, maybe you shouldn't say, I'm sorry, should I not have
No,
been
go
so
for it. No,
Maybe you
you're
shouldn't
good.
say, I hope they knew Jesus. It's the only way to get into heaven, because fuck you.
Yeah,
I'm
fuck
sorry,
you. That
because
is insensitive
that
as
is
shit.
insensitive, that is inappropriate, and if you know they're not Christian and they were probably pagan, you're saying that to subtly tell somebody that their friend or partner is in hell, and you're a fucking bitch.
And that's not cool, man.
And I hope you're listening.
Like when you are in grief, you know how you want to be felt, or you want to be treated. But grief is not the golden rule. Grief is not the platinum rule, okay? So the golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others how you want your grandmother or your mother to be treated. The grief rule is make no assumptions whatsoever. The kindest thing I have learned to say through my own grief is there are no words.
There are
my
no
heart
words.
is
Me
with
too.
you.
Me too. That's my
It's
go-to.
the kindest thing you can say.
Is I can't imagine, because I can't imagine, and I'm not going to tell you I can. And there are no words, because I know, having grieved and lost, that anybody who says I'm sorry,
The words don't matter.
they don't. I mean,
They
that
don't
feel
fucking
free.
matter.
Feel free.
They don't fucking matter. They matter to you, but this isn't the golden rule. It's the grief rule.
If you, I hate to say don't say I'm sorry, because some people like that sort of acknowledgement. It really depends on the person, because all people grieve differently.
This is true. This is true,
Yeah.
but I have yet to have, like, my mother lost her mother when she was 19. And she said that every time somebody said, I'm sorry, she wanted to pull her hair out. She fucking hated hearing it because, or when people said, I understand, like, but you don't, because you're not fucking me. You're not me who lost the most important person in my fucking life.
You know, I was actually going to come at that. For me as a person,
we're all different. So
right.
we
For
each have
me
different
as a
things to say.
person, if someone has gone through something similar, like, for example, someone lost their husband, well, another widower or a widow says, I understand. That's because they really do.
Right.
And for me, that is comforting.
That
if
is,
you
and
really
If you,
do.
right. But, like, I guess in my mother's circumstances, she was a teenager losing her mom. And my grandmother passed away from cancer in the 70s, so very early on in cancer treatments. She watched her go through chemotherapy and stuff, and you know, she watched her deteriorate. And so when grown adults who still had their own parents would say, I understand, or I'm sorry for your loss, it literally drove her batshit crazy. And I can only imagine, because I'm terrified to lose my own parents, guys. I'm a 39-year-old woman. My parents turned 70 this year. And I refuse to verbally acknowledge that they will die. I say, if my mother dies, if my father dies, the only time I actually verbally acknowledge my parents' mortality, not even my own, because we've discussed I may be immortal until I die. You don't know.
No, straight up. I
Yeah.
don't discuss my mortality at all.
I can't. It gives me vertigo. If you don't know
It gives me anxiety.
Yeah, like I get straight vertigo. I get fucking dizzy, and I can't breathe. My chest tightens. I may have a path and a relationship with death, But I may also be immortal. But my parents might also be immortal. I can't acknowledge that I might lose them.
Well, I think
it's too difficult. Other than when I tell my husband, expect me to be incapacitated for a month, because that is what I expect of myself.
It goes in line with, I think, it's not the same, but it is the same with that mentality of bad things can't happen to me. Well, death can't happen to me. I'm alive. And like, I don't say that ironically, I say that seriously, because we're all the main characters in our own lives, and if we're not there, then
what's gonna happen?
My fear with death is, and I realize it's an indoctrination that I'm working still to escape, release myself from, but it's, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong and I do go to hell? What if we're all wrong and there's absolutely nothing?
That is actually my biggest fear, is that it's just blackness.
What is that?
Right? And
like
also,
our as
my
people,
I can't imagine my consciousness like bleeping the fuck out.
Well,
so I can't imagine anybody else's just being gone.
I think that's a human thing, because I had asked someone actually at a church, I believe. It was brought up, but they just didn't. I think it was at a church. I don't know. It was someone. Humans are conscious. We're conscious when we're born, for the most part. So the idea of...
We're conscious when we're in utero.
Right. The idea of no consciousness is incomprehensible to us, because we've never experienced
except in sleep.
Well, but our brains are still working, or we're still breathing, we're still alive, so we're dreaming.
We're not necessarily dreaming. I don't dream every time I sleep. So like,
I guess I get you if you have like times where you don't dream and it's just black, and then you wake up. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. I think those are my two biggest fears, and I know the one about hell is strictly indoctrination, and I realize that. But when you're told by the church for so long, you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna go to hell, and then you have some other bitch in your life saying you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna go to hell, it's really hard to move past that sort of hold.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I'm sorry, I'm not being very kind today, am I?
No, it's fine. So anger is the first...
Oh, God, is that where I'm at? I guess that makes sense.
Is the first step in the grief process, guys.
So maybe I am in my anger
So
stage.
It's natural to be angry at death, because we can't imagine not being conscious. We can't imagine that piece that's human going away. We can't imagine it, and it makes us fucking angry. You know why? Because we think about ourselves dying, and you know what? That's okay. Most people, when they have a death in their lives, or even in their remote lives, okay, like at the same time that our friend passed away, I learned that another coworker from the same place that I met Rex passed away a couple days before. And it's like death is catching. Okay, so death comes in threes, in case you didn't know. So I'm fucking terrified. But also, it's so ancillary. I haven't seen him in years, right? But if he had been the only one to pass, I still would have been reminded of my own mortality, even if I didn't have this closer relationship in my face. Death makes us think about our own mortality, and then we feel guilty because we're thinking about ourselves when we should be thinking about others. Part of the reason we wanted to have this episode is to not only scold you into saying the right things, but also to let you know it's natural to think about your own mortality when you're presented with death.
I hate it. I'm going to be honest with you. I hate it. I also hate the fact that even if we don't cease to exist, we're not here. You know, I think if you get angry at someone and you're not talking anymore, they're on this earth. They're on this planet. The idea of, you know what, I don't want to message them, but I can if I could.
Yeah. Like, I
That
have
option,
the choice.
that option's taken from me.
Right.
And that's
And
what
that makes us angry. It's upsetting.
I notice a lot of people also get angry at deities or God if they're Christians. And I think it's because it's easier to find someone to blame.
Yeah. And again, I come back to guilt because, like, guilt is an emotion of the living. We feel guilty about the things that we did or didn't do. I know I've lost several friends, and I felt guilty about every single one of them.
Now I have a question. When we pass, do you think our consciousness kind of gains that knowledge that we didn't have in our human body? So, like, let's say someone passes away and now they know what they should have known because they're at that spiritual level, back out of the body. Or do you think...
I think that would depend on the individual. You know what I mean? Because, like, some spirits don't even know they're gone. You know what I mean? I guess I've never really thought about it outside of, like, that childish thinking of, you know, like the ghost at the funeral who's hearing everybody say the things about him, you know? I've never thought about it beyond that.
So, like, for me...
Like, in a realistic way.
For me, it's like we're all the souls, right? Like, we all choose to come back to Earth. So when you pass, you get that knowledge and that you are at that point again where you're another soul, and whether you come back or not, you decide.
Like, you become part of the everything.
Yes. So
I do believe that.
You know the lessons that you were supposed to learn. You finally understand them. You realize that the fights that you were in don't make sense. Actually, as I say that, that's what we're working towards in this life. That's what we're working towards, that enlightenment. So when we pass, we do know those things because not everyone is working towards that, and that's why they don't always remember. Yeah. That's why we have angry spirits.
That makes perfect sense to me. That makes perfect sense to me.
So the second stage in grief is denial. I don't understand this one, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think I've ever been in denial. With my losses.
You know, I see denial very much like, for me, it's avoidance. It's not so much denial, right? It's avoiding it. Now, granted, that could just be like a generational thing. I'm at the cusp of the Gen Xers, like I'm at the very end there. I'm a Zennial or an early millennial who runs, you know, I know how to deal with my emotions and shit, but I sure as fuck know how to turn that shit off till I'm ready to fucking deal with it too. And so I think that denial kind of falls in that same category of avoidance, right? Some people deny, like, no, you can't be dead, you can't be dead, you can't be dead. And you know what? Actually, now that I say that, that was in the hospital, like, oh my God, no, this isn't real.
I would think that would be the first stage to me. I would think, for me, it's denial because no, that can't happen. You can't be
right.
dead.
No, that makes sense.
And then I get pissed because it's like, oh shit, this did happen.
Yeah, and then you move into bargaining, which is the third stage, which is where you're like, I'll change my fucking ways, just give them back to me. But we don't want a zombie apocalypse. So, unfortunately, our society has to better accept death. We as a society have to change the way we feel about death. YouTube, you've seen my face. Podcast land, you've heard my voice tonight. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to try and be happy, Amber, tonight, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm not fucking hurting. Because we have to show that we're hurting. We have to let that shit fucking out. We have to take time to hurt so we can take time to then heal. If you don't fucking let your hurt out, it just becomes more fucking hurt. Like, you turn it into self-pain, you turn it against yourself, and then nobody is going to do any better with what's happened. Not that we can ever do better with death, but anyone who's experienced death in their lives definitely knows that every time you lose somebody, you change the way you live. Not just, oh, I'm going to eat healthier because I don't want that to happen to me. But you change the way you live. The girl that was like my little sister hanged herself before 2020 broke out. It was at the beginning of 2020. She got to fucking miss COVID by like 6-8 weeks. I saw her every time I went to Texas. I saw her when I went to see her mom. She reached out to me on Facebook once in a while and I'd message back. But I will never forgive myself for not doing more. For not. So now, when my friend calls and tells me that somebody I care about's in the hospital, I take the next fucking day to go see them. And thank God, because I got to see them conscious one last time. Now, because my friend just lost his best friend and his wife, and I felt too bad reaching out to him when he lost his wife because we weren't that close. But he doesn't have that big of a circle. I fucking message him every day. And when I slept all day on Sunday because I couldn't anymore, he messaged me because it meant something that I was messaging him every day because he lost his wife. And a month and 10 days later, he lost his best friend. And I changed the way I am because Maddie knows I don't just check in on people every day. I feel like I'm annoying them. I would never fucking do that. I gave him one chance. I said, I'm gonna fucking do this every day. I'm gonna check in on you every day. And this right now is your only chance to tell me not to do it. Because otherwise, any other day, you can tell me fuck off, you can give me a thumbs up, you can whatever, I don't care, but I'm gonna check in on you every day. And he said, okay. Because even though he has a small world, his world just fucking collapsed. And he's changing his life too. Because every time you touch death, your life changes. So death is a part of life. So does that bring us to depression, or are we still in bargaining? I'm not sure. But there's 5 stages to grief, y'all.
I think we are in the depression stage, and
that's accurate.
I think that it's, in a sense, I think it's healthy. You know, you can't just sit there and pretend like you're not upset, like you're not depressed. Like you were just saying, you have to show it. And if we were told that we could show these things, then it would, I think people
would be okay. Yeah.
Well, I think people would get you know what the hell I'm trying to say.
Get over it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep over talking you, but
please do, because
I think you're right.
Subject.
That's exactly what needs to be said about that. If we made it easier for people to show their emotion instead of being like, you're making me uncomfortable. You're fucking emoting over there, oh, you're angry,
my God, she's
or
crying
you're sad.
so loud. Why can't she get a hold of herself while she's in public?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, she's making me uncomfortable. Fuck, I went to the dispensary and motherfucking 3 a.m. was playing. I didn't even want to be there. I wasn't up for that. You know what the lines to 3 a.m. are? It's 3 a.m. and I'm feeling lonely. And a good friend of mine just lost her husband and I lost my mind. I'm tears in my eyes looking at the ceiling because I don't want to make everybody else uncomfortable with what I'm feeling. But should I have to? Mm-hmm. Should I have to behave that way? I came across this meme online that said, like, I don't remember what country it is, but like a perfectly acceptable response to how are you doing today or something like that is, for the purposes of this conversation, I'm doing fine. Mm-hmm. And I did use that twice during this experience. And you know what? It struck people as funny, but it got me out of talking.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think when somebody's had a great loss, yes, you want to ask them how you're doing or how they're doing. But how are you doing today is a very loaded question.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
You can check in on people and you can let them know that you're thinking of them and you're there for them without putting them in an awkward situation of trying to protect your feelings about how they're feeling. Does that make sense?
I think so. And I think something else we need to acknowledge is you don't want to overwhelm people. Like, which is pretty much what you're saying with the loaded questions. But when somebody just loses someone, they don't want somebody to, well, depending on the person. Look, if you're not very close with this person, if you're not super close with this person, maybe just randomly, I don't know. I just feel like randomly deciding to show up after we've only said 2 words at my house to just come in and pretend like you're my best friend while I'm going through this. That would irk me. Now, some people want that because that's the way they grieve. For me, that would really irk me. I'd be like, look, you didn't want anything to do with me until there was something theatrical going on.
Right,
Not to call it theatrical, but
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, no, something dramatic.
Yeah.
Something that, like, now you have this thing that you can be like, oh, I'm so upset about.
Yeah, and make it about you.
Right. Which is not the same thing as what we addressed in the beginning of the episode. So let's go back to that, where when we deal with death, we relate it to our own lives. And a lot of us feel guilty and we're like, I'm not making it about me, but this is how I feel about it. Mm-hmm. Like, you're allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to have emotions about your own mortality, your spouse's mortality, your parents' mortality, your children's mortality. When something rocks your world, even if it doesn't rock your direct household, it can still rock your world. It can still rock your soul. It can still bother you. It can hurt. It can hit hard. And that's okay, because you're dealing with your grief, and that's not you making it about yourself. That's literally a human response to death, is we relate to it, and we understand that we're gonna be in those shoes one day. And it's natural. There's nothing to feel bad about it. There's nothing to feel bad about with just knowing that your death comes to your mind, or a relative's death comes to mind because you're dealing with it. It's not
selfish.
No, it's natural.
Something I struggled with was relating it to a family member of my own and being like, if that was me. And I did feel bad for thinking that.
But that's literally empathy. You are putting yourself in the other person's shoes. You know, our friend that we lost, I would say probably both of us are closer to his wife. Mm-hmm. Like, I've known him longer, but I'm closer to his wife. Mm-hmm. And this whole time, this whole motherfucking time, it's their marriage that's broken my heart. It's what she has to deal with now. Like, me too. I can't imagine being there. Too. I've imagined it. Like, if you're a married person, you've probably thought about what you would have to deal with or what you would do if you were in that situation. But like, this is somebody I'm close to, that they're younger than I am. They're in between mine and Maddie's ages. And so, like, it hits close to home for us in lots of different ways. And we care so much about them. And we care so much about her. And we just can't even imagine what she's going through. And that's okay. That's called empathy. We're not saying like, oh, I am so upset about my husband because we're saying I can't imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
I am so fucking heartbroken for you guys. Because I feel fucking guilty. I said, I hope that they get out of there by Valentine's Day.
Oh my God, Valentine's Day.
He passed away on Valentine's Day.
He did. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible Valentine's Day this year.
But you know what? It's all about fucking community, guys. Like,
yes.
The more death you deal with, you'll realize it's about community coming together. You know, when somebody passes away or somebody's ill, that family is in need. And that's when community is so important.
Well, and some people don't relate or can't come around with their blood family. Right. So that's where the community, that's just because you're not blood family doesn't mean you're not family. Because I consider them family. Like you said, we literally celebrated all of the holidays together.
Yeah, and we're solitary practitioners. So, that's a big deal for us.
Exactly. And I mean, they were Rex in general was one of the things to look forward to in the holidays. I think everybody agrees because he was
he was
fucking
the life of the party.
I was like, he's gonna say some weird shit. Actually, he bought a Bad Dragon. I think it was Beltane. Yeah, he did.
Yes, you mentioned it. I totally forgotten.
That was a fun conversation. Was that Beltane? It was something like that. It was an outside barbecue, so it was something along those lines.
Guess I don't remember which one.
But what did we just get together for? We didn't get together for Yule this year, I don't think. We did. Was it Maybon?
Yeah.
Maybon. That was funny because Orion was born and...
Yeah. He called me the baby whisperer, so that was fun.
The daughter made that funny comment, and now I feel like she probably feels really bad about that comment.
Yeah, she probably doesn't remember. She's
I hope
a teenager. Yeah, but
it was just always the literal life of the party. He said, and then he would say some controversial shit.
Yeah, he would. We talked so much shit in his hospital room trying to get him to pop up and tell us some shit. We were trying to anger him out of So remembrance is important too, guys, but community is super important, and that's where we started this with it's important to come together as a community because, okay, it's not about you, but God damn it, if I'm ever in that boat, I want my people coming around me. I want them offering me their help. They don't have to show up at my door unannounced. Please, God, don't. But, reaching out is so important. Just, letting somebody know that you're available to them, right? Because, in this day and age, it's so hard for us to ask for help from each other. Especially a lot of us, our personality types, it just doesn't allow us to do that. So calling or texting and saying, hey, I know you have so much on your plate, I can't even imagine, but, whatever you need from me, I'm there, just let me know. That's important. That's important. When you are dealing with a life or death situation or you're dealing with the aftermath and the death part, there's day-to-day life doesn't stop. If you've got kids, if you've got a job, if you've got pets, life doesn't fucking stop. And that's where community comes in.
Well, because that's where they're really going to help you with the depression thing. So my thing with grief is, I never really I'm fortunate in the sense that I haven't lost a lot of people, but the one that stuck with me the most was the loss of my pregnancy. And something that I struggled with was, what is the fucking point? What is the point? What is the point getting up and sweeping? Why? Dust is just going to be there again anyway. And this person is not here anymore. That's what I have issues with. Is what is the point?
That is really like the depths of despair. Really, truly.
Well,
You know,
I've had that thought.
but-
I've had that thought as well with this loss. Like, what is the point in someone being born to die so young? And that's anger towards the deities.
Yeah.
You know, or
it is.
fate or whatever.
Right, or society, because it caused the circumstances. I mean, there's a lot of places to place anger, and there's a lot of places to be upset, and there's a lot of questions to ask in that kind of regard. And that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to mention that, like, you know, I briefly mentioned on our Wild Hunt episode that my father-in-law had passed. He was 70 years old, and he had dementia.
There's a difference.
And he was tired, and he was old. You know, this gentleman had a 9-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. And he hadn't lived a full life. Like, you know, my father-in-law, his grandchildren were practically grown up, you know what I mean? Like, he, you know, his oldest granddaughter was 21 when he passed. His youngest granddaughter was almost 16 when he passed. He'd raised 2 sons. He'd lived this full life. He'd been a missionary in Africa. He'd done so many things with his life. He had lived a full life to 70 years old. But when Ben died, he was just shy of 30. And Rex was born the same year as Ben. So he was like 36-ish. And that is young. And when it's the death of a young person, it hits harder. And it's kind of natural.
Well, I think it not only hits harder, but it also really brings in that mortality.
Yeah.
That even the young
Right.
and the good.
Yeah.
You know what? But it's always the old assholes. I mean, dude, am I an angry griever?
Maybe. My husband makes jokes all the time about, like, you see those ladies or the dudes that are like 109 years old on the news, and they're like, I eat bacon every day and smoke 3 cigarettes a day, and I take a shot of whiskey with my coffee.
I know.
You know? And he's like, you know, he's always making those jokes, and he's like, he's not wrong. But at the same time, it's like...
For me, it's like, it's always the worst people that live to be 109. Like, Kevin, you beat the shit out of your wife. Why are you 109 years old?
Because
when this
nobody wants him. And in hell, they're both like, no.
Yeah, nobody wants him. Okay, I like that, actually. That makes so much sense. They're fighting over it.
They've got a legal battle going on. This guy's going to win until one lawyer fucking wins.
I love that. That makes so much sense. Because it is always the assholes.
See, we can always bring it around to laughter, guys.
We can.
And you know what? That's okay. You know why? Because everybody grieves differently.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah.
I think, I don't know, if you have anything else you ever want to talk about in the future with this, feel free, but we just wanted to cover this because
it's important.
It's important, and everybody grieves differently, so it's okay. If you would like to support the guest family, Mariah's Cash App is where donations are being sent. It's $MoriahGuest. I'll also put that in the description, but you know, Rex Guest was a guest on this plane for far too short a time, and his family needs all the help they can get. And we're not trying to force you whatever, but if you have a means and you are interested, they can use the help. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Melissa, if you guys are interested in showing us some love and support, check us out on Patreon. We're the Witches Talking Tarot. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes. Find us on Facebook at Witches Talking Tarot and Instagram at Witches Talking Tarot. And Twitter at Classiest Witches.
Thanks for sitting with us for a spell.